Hello, I'm Jane Simpson. I began the Let's Talk MND podcast after my husband Robert was diagnosed with MND and he died 10 months later. This podcast has built an MND family. We share real stories from people living with MND, those who love them, and we learn about research and care in plain English. I'm not an expert, just someone with lived experience, and together we are stronger. This podcast is proudly supported by Evercare, an assisted living brand that shares our belief in independence, dignity, and community. You can learn more about their range at evercare.com.au, or you can find them in Bunnings Warehouse stores nationally. I'm so thankful for Evercare's support of the MND community, and I really hope that you enjoyed today's conversation. I'm really happy about today's podcast. We're being joined by Gary Suntup. Now, Gary's a bit of a thinker. Gary and I first started discussing this on the 25th of January, 2025. And it's now June 2026. So Gary likes to have a little think. But when he makes a decision, it's a good one. Welcome, Gary. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, Jane.
Gary, I have met Gary lives in New South Wales, but I've met him in person several times at Macquarie Uni things. I was introduced to him through Dom Rowe because Dom thought that the two of us might get on, and he was right. And we spend time texting and calling as well. So I think that we are officially friends.
I agree.
So Gary, we always start this off with, who are you?
So Jane.
Yes, Gary.
I am everything and I am nothing.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. It's a big one.
I am the recipient, the lucky recipient of extraordinary suffering. I am a partner of Simone, 43 years. I am a father of two beautiful young men who are a source of enormous pride and joy. I am a brother. I am all of those many things in terms of my connections with many people. I'm a clinical psychologist, but a psychotherapist. I think sometimes I think about it as being a healer. And most importantly, Jane, since 17th of May, 2024, I've been having to work out who I am on so many levels. And that continues as time progresses.
So two things. That was the date that Gary was diagnosed with motor neuron disease.
Yeah.
Gary, why are you the lucky recipient of suffering?
So when I think about the life that I've lived and all of the unbelievable privilege and the, how fortunate that I am in my life, and I think about my sort of history. I come from my paternal grandparents were both refugees from Lithuania. I know the most about my paternal grandmother, who was orphaned in the Bolshevik Revolution and essentially was rescued from an orphanage in Lithuania and taken to South Africa. Not an uncommon story in the Jewish world. But then at a more personal or immediate level, I was born in the aftermath 2 years after my parents lost my sister Gail, tragically in a motor car accident. And I entered the world not knowing anything about any of those things, but was looked at by my extended family and the community as being an incredibly special human being because of the circumstances. It had nothing to do with who I actually was, but has very, very much informed my view of things and my view of the world and myself.
Was that a heavy burden to carry?
I wasn't aware of carrying anything and it's only been in probably a decade ago when I really started to examine my history and my past, that I realized the gravity of what was going on in my world. But I honestly was, just a recipient of love, and I was special, tragically special. And the one little memory I'll share is at primary school. We used to have physical punishment where we would get hit by a cane. And I was a very naughty kid. I could get away with anything because I was so special. And I just realized at some point that I never ever got caned. My friends would go and get the cane from the vice principal, and I would always be sent to the headmaster, Mr. Cohen, who would gently talk to me at the end of the conversation. He'd give me a lolly and say to me, "And don't tell anyone I gave this to you."
Okay.
So it just highlights the kind of special treatment that I received from the beginning of my life.
Okay. That says a lot about you, Gary. Tell me, you've told us you're a psychotherapist,
A clinical psychologist
clinical psychologist,
and psychotherapist, yeah.
and you still have your practice in Sydney and you're working most days?
Yes, I continue to work 4 days. I've sort of, generally I'm not taking on any new referrals. I decided that was not something that was fair to do.
Correct.
And, and that was, it's something that I did. Like I was diagnosed on the Friday, and essentially by the Monday, I decided that I was going to tell everyone I worked with. It was 2 weeks of informing many, many people about the diagnosis. And, some people understandably decided that they couldn't navigate something like this and
Oh.
wanted to be with a healthy person.
Oh.
But the bulk of the people that I work with, have stayed on the journey. And yeah, it's somewhere where I feel the most like my old self.
In those 2 weeks that you were telling people that you work with and your colleagues that
Mm,
you had MND, did you have to deal with their grief?
absolutely.
It's difficult, isn't it?
Absolutely. It was an incredibly powerful and an emotional time, obviously,
Mm,
which I think was also something that helped me to kind of, just allow feeling to manifest in the most sort of natural and organic way. And yeah, just this is sort of, it was quite incredible. What informed me, Jade, is that I decided that given that, it is an incredibly important trust relationship,
yeah,
that I just didn't want anyone to hear from someone else.
yeah,
I just felt that the right thing was that they heard it directly from me.
yeah, I think you're
So
right.
it was, yeah, and it was arduous.
Oh God, yeah,
Yeah,
I get
yeah.
that. So then take us on the journey of how you were diagnosed and why. Why did you follow that path?
Yeah, so Jane, my awareness of MND goes back to supporting my father um, more than a decade ago, probably 15 years ago. Um, and so he had MND. He was in his late 70s when it came on. And I was very involved. I attended every appointment that he had with Dom, and knew a lot about firsthand, and about what it looks like and where things go. So at that point, it wasn't, there was no awareness of him having had a genetic um, sort of underpinning of his MND. I think it was somewhere in my mind that there was potentially some gene that transmission. But I parked that, and I didn't give it much space. So when I first, the onset of symptoms really, I take back to the December before that, May, where I'd had COVID and I wasn't recovering my energy levels. And then in about January, I noticed that I couldn't. It was one morning, it was a slightly, a bit cool, and I couldn't click in my left hand. And I just sort of thought that's a bit odd. And then it just sort of, I let it go. And then a month later, started to notice fasciculations in the upper part of my body. And that to me was, I kind of knew at that point that I had MND. And I then contacted Dom and went to see him. And in the first appointment, he confirmed and then did gene testing. And I'm, again, tragically special, Jane. I understand that I was Dom's very first neck one patient.
Oh,
Yeah.
mazel.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Here's an important question. Why were you trying to click your fingers that morning?
Jane, I have no idea. And I think that as a psychologist, I know that there are rational, conscious things that go on. And then there are things that go on at a deeper level. And I just think that I was subconsciously, I was doing it because I was sensing something, but hadn't yet languaged it. So I think that it was really an embodiment of something and then discovering it through an actual, body action. Yeah.
Are there any trial drugs that you can go on with neck one?
Yes, so I've been fortunate to have been able to go on a drug developed by Spinogenics in the US, and Dom was, had space for the sort of second phase trial that he was involved in. So I was one of the people who was involved in taking SPG 23. I hope I haven't got that wrong. And it's now post-trial, so I'm on an off-label increased dosage, and it is apparently is showing promise in terms of slowing down progression, which is very hard for me to tell because I'm just in my progression, and the progression is quite tangible.
But then what does Dom as a clinician say?
Well, basically, what I understood,
how you're going compared with if you weren't taking it?
Well, what I've understood is that the motor neurons that were already advanced, that the drug would not be as effective with those motor neurons as the motor neurons that are still intact. And I don't want to misrepresent what Dom's said because it's what I've taken away, and it might not be accurate. So I think that unlike other people who are navigating, the sort of MND that affects the bulbar system, my speech and my breathing and swallowing remain, intact. And, so it may very well be that the SPG is providing the greatest benefit at the level of those critical, muscle systems.
How is the MND affecting you physically at the moment?
So Jane, this relates to what I said about, my part of my response to who are you? Because,
sorry, just go back.
No, go ahead.
Prior to us recording, I always say to Gary, how are you? And he always says, I'll put you on the list of people I'll let know when I work out how I am. I said a daily update would be good.
Yeah. So I think that, the most confronting, at the beginning, as you know, and you would have heard my speech, I was determined not to be defined by MND.
Yes.
And I was determined that I was going to basically focus on living and give as little space as possible to the awfulness, the reality of it. Now, that's obviously, it's a way of thinking. It's a hell of a lot more difficult in reality on a day-to-day level. So I've basically had to say goodbye over time to all my hobbies and passions. I was a very, very active person, adventurous. I also had a passion for cooking, and I can't do any of those things anymore. So it comes down to identity and who we are. And I think, at an ordinary level, the things that we do and that we're known for by others constitutes, or makes up who we are and what
Yeah.
our identity is. So, in losing all of those aspects of myself, I'm now able to grapple more deeply with the question of who am I? Um, and it's an ongoing grappling, because I think, for example, I've always been like creative in the way that I approach problems in life. And I can see that manifesting very clearly in how I'm navigating MND. So it's not so much what I do, but it's more something deeper in terms of how I approach things. And a sort of tangible example is I'm starting to consider having to move premises in terms of my practice in the eastern suburbs, because I've got 3 flights of stairs to get up.
Oh,
And yeah, and I just discovered through trial and error that if I lean heavily against the wall, it takes all the weight off my legs, and I'm able to get up the stairs much more easily. So I'm sort of, I'm just finding every possible way to kind of look at how I can pivot and adapt and adjust, and, to just maximize the value of what I still have in life.
is there a person on the first floor that would swap with you on the third floor?
My landlord actually is on the first floor. But yeah, the setup of the offices is not really conducive. So, that's just something that I'll have to navigate. I've also got a practice in Willoughby, and I'm going to be putting in like a stair lift,
Okay.
a chair lift, that, so I'll be able to have I've got other options. So it's not, yeah.
Phil
Yeah.
Camden, who's a member of our community, gave a speech the other day, and he said many people say, I live with MND.
Mm.
And Phil said, I don't live with MND. MND lives with me.
Brilliant.
I am the landlord.
That's brilliant.
And
I
it's
can
so
totally relate.
brilliant, and I can't stop thinking about it, and I'm going
Totally.
to change my language to use that.
Yeah, that's totally amazing.
Mm.
And Jane, I'm sure we're going to get there, but I'm aware we don't have a huge amount of time, but I'm talking about me and what I do, and, my sort of ability to pivot. But I think the thing that is really so important to me, and for people on the journey will know what I mean, but I'm not, it's I'm the main focus and the subject of the experience.
Yep.
But everyone who cares and loves for me is on the journey as well. And there are times when I've thought that, if someone, was dealing with something along the lines of what I'm dealing with, and I could swap and say, no, I'd rather deal with it. I just know that I would rather be dealing with it
Yeah.
than
Many of
dealing
us.
with her dealing with it.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's just, so it's a journey that everyone's on who's,
Yep.
knows the person.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've said that before. If I could take it, I would.
That you felt that.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So something, and one of the reasons that we're talking today, and in fact I brought it up with a conversation I had yesterday,
Yeah.
is your practice of radical acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
I was having a conversation with a couple yesterday who have 2 little children. He has MND, and
Yeah.
their children, who are 3 and 6,
Mm.
naturally have radical acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know anything else now except for how their dad is.
Mm.
Explain to me how you came to this and how you embody it.
Okay. So Jane, um, uh, it relates to the loss, right? And the loss itself is incredibly painful, and put any adjective you want in there. I came up with the idea of radical acceptance because the progression and the loss is continuous. And the more time and energy I give to feeling sorry for myself, or, focusing on what I'm losing, it robs me of what I've got still.
Yeah.
And I don't want to waste time on in to the extent to which I don't have a choice at some level, but to the extent to which where I do feel like I have a choice, I just want to really be focused on living and appreciating all the incredible things that I have in my life. And also I feel a responsibility which informs this radical acceptance, which is that my family's well-being is very related to how I am. And, I think that there's almost, can be a selfishness and a self-indulgence to some extent when, you're demanding more and more and more from others. So I think that the way that I cope with and the way that I carry myself on a day-to-day level, it feels really important to me because I'm already burdening them. So I think that radical acceptance is, I suppose, an effort to minimize as best as possible, the kind of potential impacts on my mood, on my emotional state, and yeah, it's something along those lines, Jane. Did that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I've heard it many times. The
Yeah.
person who has MND says that their entire microcosm,
Mm,
their mood, how they are,
mm.
totally depends on the person with MND.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do you actually practice that on a day-to-day? How do you practice radical acceptance today?
Yeah. Well, Jane, it's like, I mean, maybe I'm going to get very, just share something very private, even personal, but it's, I had my first experience of literally not being able to get off the toilet the other evening. There are lots of firsts, and you never know
Yeah.
when they're going to
No.
come. And I mean, that's one of the challenges, is that you don't know when the last time is you're
Yeah.
going to be able to do something either. But
Yeah.
but at all that's what's happening. Um, and it was a moment where, the overwhelming nature of it in the moment is undeniable, and the confronting nature of it, because Simon was the only one home. If my son Gabe was there, he's a 6'5" strapping bloke, he would have just lifted me off the ground. But Simon and I struggled for 15 minutes to find a way of getting me back up on my feet again. So I could still be sitting with and focusing on how terrible that is and how awful and whatever. And I just find myself going, it is what it is. That's what happened. Make whatever changes you need to make,
Adapt.
and adapt and move on. But I think, I think that, Jane, I've got maybe some advantages in terms of, again, going back to the sort of things that I've navigated in life. The hardships, the kind of suffering that I've seen growing up in South Africa, working as a psychologist, where there's the ordinary day-to-day world where everyone's Instagramming themselves.
Yeah.
And there's a reality of what's really going on in people's lives. And it's not just about mental illness, it's about psychological experience. And everyone really, at various times to different degrees, is having to navigate this incredibly complex thing we call life.
Correct.
And so I'm aware of I've sat with for 30 years, in that realm, of human struggle and suffering. And I'm very, very well versed in it. And I think that even though now I am the one in that position, I think I know it and I'm familiar with it. And it seems like for those reasons, it's been particularly easy for me to apply these ideas. Um, and I've also been very interested in alternative models of thinking like Buddhism and, other sort of wisdoms. And I really do feel now that I don't have to try and be in the moment. I don't have to struggle with any of it. I feel like I've become a bit of a guru, actually, because of the situation and because of my awareness of the importance now of really being in the moment. Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to translate this in a
Yeah.
way that can
You,
empower other people
could
as
you,
well.
yeah, pull your
I'm
finger out
I'm
on that
working
one,
on
will
it,
you?
Jane. I'm working on it.
Excuse me, I'll cut that out.
That's okay.
Oh, golly.
Mm.
You used a word before that I found interesting, that you said you you had demands on your family. I think that's an interesting word, because you are not personally demanding that they help you.
Mm.
It's the physical situation that you find yourself in now.
Mm.
And the people around you, most likely, want to help you.
Mm.
So I don't know the demand.
Well, I think, yeah, I totally appreciate that
Mm.
nuance. But it's really difficult, even though I know it's not my fault. It's very difficult to not feel like I'm imposing and having an impact. And I think this relates, also to something really critical, because I think that, I have no doubt that I know that this bloody condition is in the way that it's affecting them. In the ordinary world before this, someone and I, I'm sure we would have moved into a phase of our life where we would have traveled and we would have done various things that one looks forward to. And I guess, those things now are everything's, I mean, we do plan to travel still, but, so much changes. And it feels like on some level, like I am a barrier to her being able to, engage in life. And I think on the other hand, it's also transformative, and some of the things that Simone's experiencing and my boys are experiencing, there are gifts that come from suffering as well. And it deepens one's appreciation of things that I believe we take a lot for granted, Jane, in our ordinary day-to-day lives. And that's become so clear to me, even though I would say that I've not been someone who has taken things for granted. We live in a world, where we're striving and we're trying to get the next model and the next thing, and there's consumerism, and it's like this madness in a way.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
right around us is so much value, but because it's always there, I think what happens is that we just habituate and then we start to take it for granted.
I was asked that question yesterday by the couple I was talking about. They said, "What advice did I have?" And
Yeah.
I said, to embrace the ordinary.
Embracing the ordinary. And
Yeah,
that's spot on, because the ordinary becomes extraordinary.
correct.
And the
Mm.
extraordinary actually turns out to be quite ordinary. Can I quickly add something?
You can
Because
add whatever you want, mate.
no, because you know what? I was thinking about this in terms of, neurochemically. Um, the excitement factor of going fishing on my kayak and catching a kingfish, the adrenaline and the unpredictability and the dopamine surge, right, makes that seem so important. Having dinner at home with your family, which happens every day, whatever, is just ordinary. There's no dopamine surge. In fact, you might have conflict. There might be tension. So I think that there's this sort of this illusion of what's important. and that we're all kind of, I'm going to say, victim to. And now, there's this real shift of awareness around knowing that we take the ordinary.
Excuse me. I'll be editing this a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that we those hobbies and those things we do that seem so critical and so valuable, that they are, of course they are. I don't want to deny them. I'd love to be able to fish again, but they're not that difficult. They haven't been that difficult for me to let go, because I'm just discovering other areas of incredible value that I would say I hadn't quite realized the degree to which they're there.
Do you see someone professionally?
So I've actually been in a weekly supervision with a senior colleague of mine
Good.
for
Oh,
27
okay.
years now. So, and that's the space, because it's been going on for so long. It's supervision, but it's also my therapy. So yes,
Okay, that's
I
good.
do.
That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. I
Physician,
was,
physician heal thyself. Yeah.
yeah, no, but I'm just sort of wondering, what you had in mind when you asked.
I, I was wondering whether you were getting external influence on your
Mm,
thinking.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because I find personally
Mm,
it's good for me if ever I'm going to make a big decision, or if ever I
mm.
have confused thinking or have problems.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Personally,
Yeah.
I need to run it past someone else who's more objective.
Yeah, and I think it's a wonderful way of thinking about the therapy space, because I think we live in a society where it's all about, you see someone if there's something wrong with you,
Yeah.
or if you have a diagnosis, or if
Yep.
you have an illness.
Yep.
And I just think it's a model that has gone awry,
Mm.
because I think the value, just navigating life itself, is complex, and
Yep.
having that trusted space where someone knows you and you can trust their, you know,
Mm.
sense of you, and
Mm.
how, yeah, is just, yeah, I mean, it's easier said than done, because of course there's cost involved,
Mm.
but I think it's a great investment of time and money,
Mm.
if it can be seen in terms of the phenomenal value. It sounds like I'm doing a pitch for um for the
Well,
field.
you're not taking on any new clients, so it's not
Well, that's
personal.
that's not it's not in any way for myself. That's right. Thank you, Jane.
No spamming.
uh,
So this is a question that I don't ask everybody, but I will ask you.
mhm.
Do you have a bucket list?
So what's really interesting is that what I've discovered, because that's a very common experience,
Mm.
and I've discovered that the dilemma for me in terms of doing things like going traveling, which I plan to do still, it is that it also takes me away from the things that I value so much in the life that
Mm.
I've got.
Mm.
So it's almost like having to weigh something up. So I'm not sort of, I think I've realized, and I have so much gratitude for the what I have in my life, because I don't need to do anything. I
Yeah.
don't need a bucket list. But I've always wanted to go to Japan. I haven't done that yet, and I also want to go and back to Cape Town and see some loved ones, and the beautiful city. And so those would be the sorts of things on my bucket list. But my big bucket list, no, I do,
Okay.
is that, and you obviously, this, I don't know if this is appropriate, because it's almost like a little bit of a sell, but have a very long standing friend who is a doctor in Oxford. We grew up together, and big gaps in our contact over the years, but him and I are actually planning a podcast series.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And, it's hopefully, going to be of enough value that people will have the option of making donations to MND.
Good.
It's totally voluntary, and we plan to this. It feels like it has an enormous amount of potential. So that is one of the main things on
Good.
my bucket list,
Good.
and we have started.
Oh, good.
So yeah, that's what comes to mind most clearly.
What are you calling it?
So fundamentals is the title.
And when are you launching?
So we did about 8 months of weekly conversations, which were very spontaneous and incredibly improvised and just in the moment. And we now formally starting the series. Um, when it'll be published is very difficult to know, but we're doing it weekly. And he happens to be, an immunologist, but very interested in a emerging field called psychoneuroimmunology, which is really looking at the mind-body interaction.
A mind-gut interaction or
Psychoneuro,
mind-body?
well, psychoneuroimmunology. So looking at psychological experience
Okay.
in terms of its, flow on effects neurologically, and then
Yep.
how it can affect the immunological system. So it's a newish area of medicine,
Mm.
and I've always been frustrated in the field of mental health because we reduce everything to the individual and diagnosis. Now, obviously, we need to do that. But people find themselves in the places they find themselves as a function of complex, social and family history, and I feel that area is being neglected
Mm.
in the day-to-day way in which people think about mental health. So, it feels like there's a lot of really important things that need to be thought about, especially after 30 years of working in the field and seeing where the field has gone. And for him medically, he's also very concerned about developments in medicine where, the old style family GP in the UK especially is no longer, how things work.
No
So you've got this sort of loss of a connection with a
connection.
doctor who knows your history,
Yeah.
knows you, a lot of important data. And he's actually developed a platform called Added Health, which is specifically designed to address the changes technologically and with AI and everything and telehealth, all of the modern, we humans love efficiency and convenience, and we don't realize what we're giving up, in the service of trying to make our lives easier.
Yeah.
Mm.
Life is messy.
Well, it's the Buddhist wisdom is that life is suffering, and I have to say, um, it's a good place to start rather than, thinking that everything's going to be great and straightforward and easy.
And how do you understand happiness if you haven't had suffering? People say, I just want my children to be happy. Well, that's good.
Mm.
But how do you know happy?
I think everything that we experience is is kind of relative. And I think that happiness can only be felt if we know sadness.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I forgot to mention at the top of the show that you do like to talk.
Mm.
So we're going to have to begin to wrap.
Sure thing.
But what I'm going to say to you is, what advice do you have for other people who've just been diagnosed?
Just to, Jane, I say this with the awareness of your experience with your husband. And we've spoken about this before, where he didn't want anyone to know, right? And there's no right or wrong way of doing this, and I think we cannot generalize.
No.
I can just say that in my own experience, I made a very different decision, and that is that I decided I was going to tell everyone that I know. And I'm now also including people, in my neighborhood who I don't hesitate to ask for help. And I now drive around sometimes on a little electric scooter, a little 3-wheeler travel scooter, it's called. And when I arrive at work, I've got to get up four stairs and take the scooter with. And it's too much of a falls risk. So I just wait until someone walks past and then I ask them if they can help me. I end up getting hugs and gratitude expressed, and it's been 2 months now, and I now will arrive, and I don't have to ask anymore because people in the neighborhood just know that I need help getting it up the stairs.
It's beautiful.
So it's just beautiful, and you start to connect with people, and I'm discovering that there is a lot more kindness in the world that I knew about before. And so tap into the kindness, tap into the support. It's absolutely critical, and know that you are in a value exchange with the people who are around you, who want to be there for you. And they're getting something out of it big time as well, because it goes to the most beautiful area of human compassion and love.
Yeah, you can't do better than that. You can't say any better than that.
Okay, well, good.
That's it. You're done.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure, and I hope I'm able to come back again in the future.
You are. In 2 or 3 years, it's a date.
Excellent.
Okay.
I'll be there.
I know you will. All right. Lots of love. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jane. And thank you for all the work.
If you'd like to get in touch, you can message me on the Let's Talk MND Facebook or Instagram pages, or Let's Talk MND5@gmail.com. The information on this podcast is not medical advice. And the music you hear is by a much-loved member of our family, John Hanley. Once again, thanks to Evercare for sponsoring this podcast and supporting Let's Talk MND. Their commitment to care and community helps make meaningful conversations like today's possible.